Your body is a battlefield. Right now, this second, invisible armies wage war in your gut, your lungs, your blood. Some you need, some will kill you. The difference? A protein fold, a missing gene, a single mutation. We call them pathogens, bacteria that laugh at antibiotics, viruses that melt organs, parasites that hijack your brain, fungi that eat you from inside, prions, rogue proteins with no DNA, no life, just an unstoppable urge to corrupt. Which one scares you most? Let's find out. 1,407? That's how many distinct species can infect humans? According to a 2005 Centers for Disease Control survey published in Emerging Infectious Diseases in December 2005, 208 are viruses or prions, 538 bacteria, 317 fungi, 57 protozoa, 287 helminths, worms that grow inside you. 13% are emerging or re-emerging threats, meaning they're getting worse, adapting, spreading. The survey counted every documented human pathogen and cross-referenced outbreak data from the World Health Organization and ProMed surveillance networks. 37% of viruses on that list were flagged as emerging, and to tell my house and on my wine. Only 3% of helminths. Viruses evolve fast. Worms don't need to. If you value documented pathogen research and infectious disease history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. Also, this script is researched and factual, using sources from the National Center for Biotechnology Information's Molecular Biology of the Cell textbook published in 2002. The WHO Bacterial Priority Pathogens list released in May 2024 in The Lancet Infectious Diseases, and CDC Emerging Infectious Diseases data updated through November 2025. These aren't generic overviews. These are the raw numbers from lab benches and autopsy tables. Now back to the information. Start with bacteria, single cells, no nucleus, walls made of peptidoglycan. Most don't hurt you. Your gut holds 10 times more bacterial cells than human cells. They digest food, produce vitamins, block pathogens, but pathogenic bacteria carry virulence genes, DNA sequences that code for toxins, adhesion molecules, immune evasion proteins. Vibrio cholerae has genes for cholera toxin. Clostridium botulinum makes botulinum toxin, the deadliest substance known by weight. 1 microgram per kilogram of body weight kills. 1 gram could theoretically kill 1 million people. Published in the Journal of Infectious Diseases in 1996. The toxin blocks acetylcholine release at neuromuscular junctions. Muscles stop responding. You suffocate. Paralysis creeps from eyes to diaphragm in hours. Escherichia coli, normal gut resident. Strain 0157:H7 produces shigatoxin. First identified in Japan in 1982. Outbreak in Washington state in 1993 killed 4 children, sickened 700. Source: undercooked hamburgers at Jack in the Box restaurants. The toxin destroys blood vessel linings, kidneys fail, brain swells. Hemolytic uremic syndrome. 20% of infected kids need dialysis, 5% die. The bacteria sticks to intestinal cells using a protein called intimin, coded by the EAE gene. Delete that gene, no infection. Proven in mouse models published in Infection and Immunity in 1995. Now the nightmare bacteria, carbapenem-resistant enterobacterales, CRE, the CDC calls them a critical threat. They neutralize carbapenems, last resort antibiotics used when everything else fails. New Delhi metallo-beta-lactamase, NDM-CRE. Between 2019 and 2023, after a siege, cases surged 461% in 29 U.S. states, according to CDC surveillance published in Annals of Internal Medicine in September 2025. The enzyme sits in a plasmid, a ring of DNA that jumps between bacterial species. Klebsiella pneumonia picks it up. So does Escherichia coli. They swap genes in hospital sewage. One infection spreads the code to dozens of species. Treatment options: polymyxins, aminoglycosides. Older drugs with kidney-destroying side effects. Mortality rate for bloodstream infections, 40 to 60% in some hospitals. 12,700 infections and 1,100 deaths in the US in 2020 alone, per CDC estimates. Methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, MRSA, the bacteria that eats hospital wards, carries the MEK-A gene on a mobile genetic element called staphylococcal cassette chromosome MEK. The gene codes for an altered penicillin-binding protein. Beta-lactam antibiotics can't stick to it. Result? Resistance to methicillin, oxacillin, all cephalosporins. First detected in 1961 in England, by 2021, MRSA caused 130,000 deaths globally, more than double the 57,200 deaths in 1990. Numbers from the Global Burden of Disease study published in The Lancet in September 2024. It spreads by touch, towels, gym equipment, wrestling mats. Small cuts become abscesses. Abscesses seed the blood. Sepsis kills in days. Antimicrobial resistance will kill 39 million people by 2050 if current trends hold. The Lancet study from September 2024 analyzed 84 pathogen drug combinations across 204 countries. Deaths directly attributable to resistant infections, 1.91 million in 2050. That's a 70% jump from 2021. Carbapenem-resistant bacteria are the main driver. Abomani, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Klebsiella. The WHO placed carbapenem-resistant Acinetobacter baumannii in the critical priority tier in their May 2024 list. Some regions hit 90% resistance rates. Bloodstream infections carry 60% mortality. No new drug classes in 30 years. The pipeline is dry. Flip to viruses. Not alive, can't reproduce alone, no metabolism, just genetic code wrapped in protein, RNA or DNA in a capsid shell. Sometimes with a lipid envelope stolen from host cells, they hijack your ribosomes, copy themselves thousands of times, burst out. Poliovirus takes 6 hours. HIV integrates into chromosomes and hides for years. Size? 20 to 200 nanometers. Bacteria are 1 to 5 microns, 1,000 times bigger. You need an electron microscope to see viruses. Filoviruses, Marburg, Ebola, named for their thread-like shape under microscopy, family Filoviridae. Order Mononegavirales. Marburg was discovered in 1967 in Marburg, Germany. Lab workers handling African green monkeys from Uganda got hemorrhagic fever. 7 of 31 died, 23%. The virus destroys endothelial cells lining blood vessels. Capillaries leak, blood pressure drops, organs starve, bleeding from gums, eyes, gastrointestinal tract. Case fatality rate averages 50%, but has spiked to 88% in Angola's 2005 outbreak. That one killed 329 of 395 infected. Rwandan outbreak in September 2024, 66 cases, 15 deaths, 23% mortality, lowest ever for Marburg in Africa, declared over December 20th, 2024 by WHO. The virus lives in Egyptian fruit bats, Rosetus aegyptiacus. Humans catch it in caves. Kedem Cave in Kenya's Mount Elgon, 600 feet deep, carved by elephants seeking salt, now home to millions of bats. Ebola is slightly more virulent. 5 species. Zaire Ebola virus kills 90% untreated. Sudan Ebola virus, 50%. First outbreak in 1976 in Zaire, now Democratic Republic of Congo. 318 cases. Mortality 88%. The virus was named after the Ebola River. Samples revealed a filamentous virus distinct from Marburg. West Africa outbreak in 2014 spread to Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone. 11,325 deaths out of 28,616 cases through WHO records. It jumped before anyone knew what it was. No containment. Health workers died. Burial practices spread virus from corpses. Blood and vomit contain billions of particles. Touch it once, you're infected. Incubation, 2 to 21 days. By the time you show fever, virus loads peak at 10 to the 8th copies per milliliter of blood. Monoclonal antibodies work if given early. Regin EB3, atoltavimab, maftivimab, odesivimab, 3 antibodies targeting the glycoprotein spike. Cure rate 90% in patients with low viral loads. Tested during the 2018 Congo outbreak published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Late stage, 10% survive. Organs have already failed. But there's no Ebola treatment for most variants. Sudan virus outbreak in Uganda in September. 2022 killed 71 of 142 cases. 50%, no approved therapy, supportive care, fluids, oxygen, blood transfusions. Hope your immune system clears it before kidneys quit. Rabies virus, Lyssavirus genus, 100% fatal once symptoms start. No exceptions. 40,000 deaths per year globally, mostly Asia and Africa. Per WHO data, the virus travels along peripheral nerves to the spinal cord, then brain. Incubation, 10 days to 1 year depending on bite location. Closer to brain, faster. The virus replicates in motor neurons. You feel tingling at the bite site, confusion, hydrophobia, terror of water because throat spasms make swallowing impossible, hallucinations, coma, death within 2 weeks of symptom onset. Only 14 people have survived symptomatic rabies using the Milwaukee Protocol, induced coma plus antivirals, success rate under 1%. Prevention, post-exposure, prophylaxis within hours of bite. Rabies, immunoglobulin plus vaccine series, miss that window, you die. Influenza A, segmented RNA genome, 8 pieces. When 2 flu strains infect the same cell, segments shuffle, reassortment, new combinations. That's how pandemics start. H1N1 in 1918 killed 50 million. Virus infected 1/3 of Earth's population. Young adults died fastest. Their strong immune responses caused cytokine storms that drowned lungs. H2N2 in 1957, H3N2 in 1968, H1N1 again in 2009, H5N1 bird flu circulates now. Case fatality rate around 50% in humans, but doesn't spread person to person, yet if it mutates to airborne transmission, we're looking at another 1918. The virus binds sialic acid receptors on respiratory epithelium. Hemagglutinin protein attaches. Neuraminidase cleaves, releasing new virions. Antibodies target hemagglutinin, which is why the vaccine needs annual updates. Last year's shot won't stop this year's strain. HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, retrovirus, RNA genome, reverse transcriptase enzyme. It copies RNA into DNA, integrates into CD4 T cell chromosomes, lies dormant or replicates slowly, killing helper T cells, immune system collapses, opportunistic infections take over, pneumocystis, pneumonia, Kaposi sarcoma, cryptococcal meningitis. Without treatment, AIDS kills in 2 to 15 years. 39 million people living with HIV globally as of 2023, 630,000 AIDS deaths that year, down from 2 million in 2004. Antiretroviral therapy changed everything. 3 drug combinations, 2 nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, plus 1 integrase inhibitor or protease inhibitor. Virus loads drop below detection. People live normal lifespans. But 25 million people lack access to treatment. Sub-Saharan Africa carries 2/3 of global cases. Stigma, poverty, clinic deserts, SARS-CoV-2, the virus that shut the planet, coronavirus family. Spike protein binds ACE2 receptors on lung, pick a heart and kidney, blood vessel cells. Furin cleavage site on the spike, unique among SARS-like viruses, makes it spread like wildfire. Wuhan, China, December 2019. WHO declared pandemic, March 11th, 2020. 7 million deaths officially. Excess mortality estimates, 15 to 20 million. Cytokine storms killed young. Blood clots killed old. Lungs scarred. Long COVID leaves millions with chronic fatigue, brain fog, dysautonomia. Vaccines rolled out in record time. mRNA technology, lipid nanoparticles carrying spike gene instructions. Cells make spike, immune system sees it, builds antibodies. 95% effective against severe disease in trials. Real world, Omicron variants dodge some antibodies, boosters help, but the virus mutates every few months. We're chasing it. Now prions, not alive, not even viruses. Just proteins folded wrong. Prion protein, PRP-C, sits on neuron surfaces. Normal function unclear. Maybe copper binding, maybe cell signaling. The misfolded version, PRP-SC, is a template. It touches PRP-C, flips it into the wrong shape. Chain reaction, misfolded prions clump into fibrils. Neurons die. Brain fills with holes. Spongiform encephalopathy. Creutzfeldt, Jakob disease, fatal familial insomnia, Gerstmann-Straussler, Schenker syndrome. Curie, mad cow disease, bovine spongiform encephalopathy. All 100% fatal. No treatment. No cure. Curie hit the 4 people of Papua New Guinea in the 1950s. Mortuary feasts. They ate dead relatives, including brains. Prions spread. Women and children, who prepared and consumed more tissue, died at higher rates. 11,000 cases between 1950 and 1960s. Carlton Gajdusek identified infectious transmission. Won the Nobel Prize in 1976. Stop eating brains. Curie stops. Last case died in 2009. Incubation 50 years from a childhood exposure. Mad cow disease emerged in Britain in 1986. Cattle-fed meat and bone meal from sheep with scrapie, a prion disease. Prions crossed species, over 184,000 cows infected. Variant CJD appeared in humans in 1996, eating infected beef. 178 deaths in UK by 2020. Median survival 13 months from symptom onset. Prions resist heat, UV light, radiation, bleach. Autoclaving at 134 degrees Celsius for 18 minutes reduces but doesn't eliminate infectivity. Surgical instruments exposed to CJD cases must be destroyed. Prions bind to steel, plastic, glass, concrete. A 2011 study in Journal of Virology showed prions stick to surfaces and remain infectious for years. Wood, rocks, aluminum all tested positive after exposure. Chronic wasting disease in deer and elk across US and Canada. Prion shedding in saliva, urine, feces, environment saturated, transmission to humans, not confirmed yet. But a 2022 Case Western Reserve study in Nature Structural and Molecular Biology mapped prion structures and found species barriers depend on protein fold compatibility. If chronic wasting disease prions adapt to human PRP, we're in trouble. A December 2024 CDC study using human brain organoids showed no transmission of 3 CWD strains. Strong species barrier for now. But Norwegian moose CWD passed twice through sheep prion protein transgenic mice, then infected human prion protein mice at 83% rate in one genotype. Published in Emerging Infectious Diseases. December 2024. Adaptation through intermediate species could open the door. If you value deep pathogen science like this, subscribe. This research came from Prion Journal's 2024 conference abstracts published November 2024 through PMC, the Efficient Transmission Study in Brain Journal, April 2024, and ongoing surveillance through CDC. Back to the list. Fungi, eukaryotes, cells with nuclei, spores 4.7 microns or smaller float through air, 300 species pathogenic to humans, Candida albicans, Cryptococcus neoformans, Aspergillus fumigatus. Most cause superficial infections, athlete's foot, ringworm, thrush, but systemic fungal infections kill. Candida. Bloodstream infections have 30 to 40% mortality in ICU patients. Cryptococcal meningitis targets immunocompromised people. HIV patients in sub-Saharan Africa. CD4 counts below 50 cells per microliter. The fungus breaches the blood-brain barrier. Headache, fever, confusion, seizures. Death in weeks without treatment. Amphotericin B plus flucytosine for 2 weeks, then fluconazole maintenance. Even with treatment, 10 to 30% die. 181,000 cases globally per year. 135,000 deaths, according to WHO data. Aspergillus fumigatus lives in soil, decaying vegetation, spores everywhere. Healthy lungs clear them. Immunocompromised lungs don't. Invasive aspergillosis. Fungus colonizes airways, invades blood vessels. Lung tissue dies. Mortality 40 to 90% depending on immune status. Hematology patients post-chemotherapy. Transplant recipients on immunosuppressants. Severe COVID cases, all high risk. Voriconazole is first-line treatment, but azole-resistant Aspergillus fumigatus spreads. Environmental use of fungicides in agriculture selects for resistance. The same mutations that block crop fungicides block medical azoles. A 2023 Environmental Health Perspective study found resistant strains in 30% of European clinical isolates. Treatment failure rates climb. Mucormycosis, black fungus, rhizopus, mucor species, spreads through sinuses into brain or lungs. Diabetics with ketoacidosis, COVID patients on steroids, both vulnerable. India saw 28,000 cases during COVID's second wave in 2021, 50% mortality. The fungus invades blood vessels, causes tissue necrosis, black patches on face, nose, requires surgical debridement, cutting out dead tissue, plus amphotericin B. Some lose eyes, parts of skull. Early diagnosis saves lives. Delayed treatment, fatal. Parasites, protozoa first, single-celled eukaryotes. Plasmodium falciparum causes malaria, transmitted by Anopheles mosquitoes. 597,000 deaths in 2023, 95% in Africa. According to WHO's December 2024 World Malaria Report, 263 million cases. The parasite has a complex life cycle. Sporozoites in mosquito saliva enter blood, travel to liver. Liver stage replication for 1 week. Then merozoites burst into blood, invade red blood cells. 48-hour cycles. Red cells rupture, releasing more merozoites plus toxins. Fever spikes every 2 days. Severe malaria destroys red cells so fast you turn anemic. Parasites clog brain capillaries. Cerebral malaria, seizures, coma, death. Children under 5 carry most of the burden. Artemisinin-based combination therapy is first-line treatment, but artemisinin partial resistance confirmed in Rwanda, Uganda, Eritrea, Tanzania, suspected in Ethiopia, Sudan, Namibia, Zambia, per WHO 2024 data. Resistance mechanisms involve Kelch13 gene mutations. Parasites survive longer under drug pressure. Treatment fails. The mosquitoes are developing insecticide resistance too. Anopheles stevensi, urban-adapted species, spreads through Horn of Africa. Active at dusk when bed nets don't protect. 8 countries report it: Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, Somalia, Sudan. Malaria vaccines RTS-S and R21 rolled out in 17 African countries as of December 2024. They target circumsporozoite protein, reduce severe disease in kids, efficacy 50 to 75%. Not perfect, but saves lives. Helminths, worms, roundworms, tapeworms, flukes, Ascaris lumbricoides infects 1 billion people. The roundworm grows 30 centimeters in your gut. Eggs shed in feces contaminate soil. You ingest them. Larvae hatch, penetrate intestinal wall, travel through bloodstream to lungs. You cough them up, swallow again. They mature in small intestine. Adult worms live 1 to 2 years. Most infections cause mild symptoms: abdominal pain, malnutrition. Heavy loads obstruct intestines. Children fail to grow. Cognitive delays. Whipworm, hookworm, schistosomiasis, all neglected tropical diseases per WHO. 17 identified in 2013, 8 caused by helminths, 3 by protozoa. Schistosoma. Mansoni lives in freshwater snails in Africa and South America. Larvae penetrate skin of swimmers, mature in blood vessels around intestines or bladder. Eggs trigger immune reactions, granulomas, scar liver, portal hypertension, esophageal varices rupture. You bleed out internally. 200,000 deaths per year. Treatment is praziquantel. Single dose, cost cents, but reinfection common in endemic areas without clean water and sanitation. Toxoplasma gondii. Protozoan parasite. Definitive host is cats. They shed oocysts and feces, contaminate soil, water, undercooked meat. 1/3 of humans infected globally. Most don't know. Immunocompetent people get flu-like symptoms. And parasites incised in brain and muscle, dormant for life. But immunocompromised patients, AIDS, transplant recipients, cysts reactivate, toxoplasma encephalitis, brain lesions, seizures, death without treatment. Pregnant women infect fetuses, congenital toxoplasmosis, brain damage, blindness, stillbirth. France screens all pregnant women. US doesn't. The parasite can alter behavior in rodents, reduces fear of cat odor, increases risk-taking. Infected rats get eaten by cats, completing the life cycle. Human behavior effects controversial, but studied. Some data links chronic infection to schizophrenia, increased risk-taking, slower reaction times. Meta-analyses show weak but consistent associations published in Schizophrenia Bulletin. Mechanism unclear. Dopamine dysregulation, neuroinflammation, open question. Back to bacteria for the worst. Mycobacterium tuberculosis, airborne. Cough once, release 3,000 bacilli. Someone breathes them. Bacteria land in alveoli. Macrophages engulf them but can't kill them. TB survives inside phagosomes, blocks fusion with lysosomes, hides, replicates slowly. Forms granulomas, clusters of immune cells walling off infection. Latent TB. 1/4 of humanity carries it. 10% progress to active disease over lifetime. Active TB destroys lungs, coughing blood, night sweats, weight loss. 10 million new cases in 2023, 1.25 million deaths per WHO. Rifampicin-resistant TB is on the WHO critical priority list as of May 2024. Treatment for drug-sensitive TB. 6 months minimum. Isoniazid, rifampicin, ethambutol, parazinamide. Missed doses, resistance develops. Multi-drug-resistant TB needs second-line drugs for 18 to 24 months. Extensively drug-resistant TB resists fluoroquinolones and injectables. Cure rates 60%. Bedaquiline and newer drugs offer hope, but access limited. The bacterium has a waxy cell wall, 70% lipids. Impermeable to most antibiotics. Slow replication, divides every 24 hours compared to E. coli's 20 minutes. Makes treatment long. Clostridioids difficile, not resistant to antibiotics. It's the consequence of them. Broad-spectrum antibiotics kill gut bacteria. C. diff, resistant to many drugs, overgrows, toxins. A and B, destroy intestinal lining, pseudomembranous colitis, watery diarrhea 20 times a day, colon perforation, sepsis, 30,000 U.S. deaths per year in severe cases. Fecal microbiota transplantation works. Donor stool recolonizes gut, outcompetes C. diff. Success rate 90%, but not standard care. Vancomycin or fidaxomicin for treatment. Recurrence rate 20 to 30%. Spores survive on surfaces for months. Vibrio cholerae, comma-shaped bacterium, lives in brackish water. You drink it, bacteria colonize small intestine, secrete cholera toxin. The toxin activates chloride channels. Water floods into gut lumen. Diarrhea up to 20 liters a day. Severe dehydration in hours. Blood pressure crashes. Kidneys fail. Death within hours without rehydration. Case fatality rate 50% untreated. Under 1% with oral rehydration salts or IV fluids. 700,000 to 4 million cases per year globally. 21,000 to 143,000 deaths. Chu estimates Haiti outbreak 2010 after earthquake. 820,000 cases. 10,000 deaths. Source traced to UN peacekeepers from Nepal who contaminated river. Cholera vaccine exists. Decoral, Shankal. 2 doses, 60 to 70% protection for 3 years. Deployed in outbreaks but supply limited. Viroids, smallest pathogens. Circular RNA, no protein coat, no genes, just RNA that acts as a ribozyme, catalyzing reactions. Only infect plants. Potato spindle tuber viroid damages crops. Avocado sunblotch viroid, citrus exocortis viroid, hundreds to 400 nucleotides in size. How do they replicate? Host RNA polymerase mistakes them for cellular RNA, copies them. They disrupt plant gene regulation, stunted growth, reduced yields, not human pathogens, but illustrate how little you need to be infectious. Just self-replicating RNA, now the numbers that matter. 1.3 million people died directly from antimicrobial resistant bacterial infections in 2019, per the Global Burden of Disease study in The Lancet, 2022. 4.95 million deaths associated with resistance, more than HIV, more than malaria. Projections for 2050. 39 million deaths cumulatively from 2025 to 2050 unless interventions scale. That's holding current resistance trends. Developing new antibiotics could avert 11 million deaths. Improving healthcare quality and access could avert 7 million. Vaccination, infection control, antibiotic stewardship, all critical. But the pipeline for new drugs aimed at gram-negative bacteria is nearly empty. Pharmaceutical companies don't invest. Antibiotic development costs $1 billion, takes 10 years, and the drug gets used as last resort, sold cheap. No profit motive. Governments and nonprofits stepping in but slowly. The burden isn't equal. Sub-Saharan Africa had 27.3 deaths per 100,000 attributable to AMR in 2019. South Asia, 21.5. High-income countries, 13. Australasia, 6.5. Low-income settings lack diagnostic labs. Empiric treatment fails. Bacteria spread unchecked. Children under 5 dying less from AMR. 488,000 deaths in 1990. Wow. 193,000 in 2021. Vaccines for Streptococcus pneumonia and Haemophilus influenzae drove that drop. But adults over 50, especially over 70, seeing rising deaths, comorbidities, frequent healthcare contact, more antibiotic exposure. Chronic illness makes infections deadlier. Seasonal flu kills 290,000 to 650,000 people annually per WHO estimates. COVID death toll topped 7 million confirmed, up to 20 million estimated excess deaths globally through 2024. Tuberculosis killed 1.25 million in 2023. Malaria, 597,000. Hepatitis B and C cause 1.1 million deaths per year combined. Cirrhosis and liver cancer. HIV, 630,000 in 2023, down from peak of 2 million. Diarrheal diseases killed 1.3 million in 2019. Rotavirus, cholera, E. coli, Shigella, Cryptosporidium. Most are children under 5 in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. Clean water, sanitation. Vaccines could prevent 90%. But here's the reveal. The one thing that ties them all, poverty, lack of access, crowding, malnutrition weakens immune systems, no clean water spreads enteric pathogens, no vaccines leave kids vulnerable, antibiotic misuse selects for resistance, buying pills over the counter, taking partial courses, treating viruses with bacteria drugs, agricultural overuse. 80% of antibiotics in US go to livestock. Selects resistant bacteria in animal guts, spreads through food, environment, factory farming, global travel, climate change, shifting vector ranges, malaria mosquitoes moving to higher altitudes as temperatures warm, dengue spreading to southern Europe. Pathogens don't respect borders, and the data keeps updating. WHO released their Global Antibiotic Resistant Surveillance Report October 13, 2025. 1 in 6 bacterial infections now resistant to treatment. 40% of antibiotics used for common infections lost effectiveness in past 5 years. Carbapenem resistance, once rare, now frequent. Southeast Asia and Eastern Mediterranean, 1 in 3 infections resistant. Africa, 1 in 5. Resistance spreading faster than new drug development. Some bacteria, Pseudomonas, Acinetobacter, resist everything. Colistin, last-line drug, causes kidney failure, but sometimes it's all that works. Pan-drug resistant isolates in intensive care units. Patients dying from infections that would have been routine 20 years ago. Prions persist in soil for years. Chronic wasting disease infects deer in 40 US states and 4 Canadian provinces. Contaminated carcasses, seed forest floors. Scavengers spread it. Hunters exposed. No human cases. Confirmed, but surveillance patchy. Variant CJD from mad cow took a decade to appear. If CWD crosses, we won't know until people start dying. Incubation can be 50 years. By then, environmental load is massive. Prion diseases have no treatment. Once symptoms start, you're dead. Median survival CJD, 4 months. Fatal familial insomnia, 18 months of no sleep, hallucinations, autonomic failure. You watch yourself die awake. Fungal infections rising. More immunocompromised patients. Cancer treatment. Transplants, biologics for autoimmune disease. Fungi that were harmless become deadly. Candida auris emerged in Japan in 2009, now in over 50 countries. Multi-drug resistant, spreads in hospitals, sticks to surfaces. Outbreaks in ICUs, 30 to 60% mortality in bloodstream infections. CDC lists it as urgent threat. Environmental factors, global warming expands fungal ranges, coccidioides immitis, valley fever fungus. Moving north from southwestern US, Histoplasma capsulatum in bird and bat droppings. Disturbed soil releases spores. Construction workers, cavers, high risk, pulmonary infections. Dissemination to brain and skin in immunocompromised. Amphotericin B toxic. Itraconazole long term. New triazoles in development, but years from approval. Parasites persist. Chagas disease in Latin America. Trypanosoma cruzi transmitted by kissing bugs. 30% develop chronic cardiac or gastrointestinal disease. Heart failure. Sudden death. Leishmaniasis from sandflies. Cutaneous lesions disfigure. Visceral disease. Kala azar. Destroys spleen and liver. 50,000 deaths per year. Treatment benznidazole. Nifurtimox for Chagas. Miltefosine for Leishmania. Side effects harsh. Access limited. River blindness. Onchocerca. Volvulus from black flies. 37 million infected. Ivermectin treats it. Mass drug administration programs in Africa reduced cases. But flies breed in fast rivers, hard to control. Elimination possible, but requires decades. Dengue fever, flavivirus, 4 serotypes, Aedes mosquitoes. 390 million infections per year per WHO. 96 million symptomatic. Severe dengue, hemorrhagic fever, kills 25,000. Second infection worse than first. Antibodies from first serotype enhance uptake of second. Antibody-dependent enhancement. Immune system goes haywire. Vaccines tricky. Dengvaxia increased hospitalization risk in seronegative kids in trials. Qdenga approved but requires 2 doses. Prevention means mosquito control. Eliminate standing water. Screens. Insecticide. Urban Aedes breed in flower pots. Tires. Gutters. Impossible to eradicate. West Nile virus. Spread by Culex mosquitoes. Birds are reservoir. North America saw introduction in 1999. Now endemic across US. 7,000 cases reported in 2022, 400 deaths, neuroinvasive disease, encephalitis, meningitis in 1 in 150 infections. Older adults, high risk, no treatment, no vaccine for humans. Horse vaccine exists. Prevention is mosquito repellent and long sleeves. Zika virus, linked to microcephaly in infants. Pregnant women infected, virus crosses placenta, disrupts fetal brain development. Babies born with small heads, severe neurological damage, Brazil, 2015 to 16, 3,200 cases of Zika-associated microcephaly. The virus spread to Americas from Asia. Aedes mosquitoes again. Sexual transmission documented. Virus persists in semen months after acute infection. No vaccine yet. Mpox, formerly monkeypox. Orthopox virus. Endemic in Central and West Africa. Clade 1 more, severe. Clade 2 spread globally in 2022. 87,000 cases, 140 deaths, primarily men who have sex with men, but also household contacts. Health workers, lesions painful, fever, lymphadenopathy, transmission by close contact, respiratory droplets, contaminated materials. Smallpox vaccine, Jynneos, provides cross-protection. Rollout in affected groups reduced cases, but Clade 1 resurgence in Congo 2024, higher mortality, sexual and non-sexual transmission, children affected, surveillance ramping, Nipah virus, paramyxovirus, fruit bats to pigs to humans, or directly from bats. Bangladesh, India outbreaks, 70% mortality in some clusters. Encephalitis, respiratory distress, no treatment, no vaccine. Culling pigs stopped spread, but economic hit massive. Avoiding raw date palm sap, bats contaminated. Small outbreaks, but pandemic potential. If airborne transmission emerges, hantavirus, rodent-borne, sin nombre virus in Americas, hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, 38% mortality. You breathe dust from rodent droppings. Virus infects lung endothelium. Capillaries leak fluid. Lungs flood. You drown. Supportive care only. European hantaviruses cause hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome. Milder, but still deadly. No vaccine in U.S. Prevention, seal homes. Avoid rodent nesting areas. Lassa fever, arenavirus, West Africa. Mastomus rodents shed virus in urine. Contaminated food, person to person via body fluids. 300,000 infections per year. 5,000 deaths. Ribavirin effective if given early. Late treatment, mortality 15 to 20%, hemorrhagic manifestations, deafness in survivors. Nigeria sees regular outbreaks, Crimean Congo, hemorrhagic fever, norovirus, tick-borne. Livestock carry it. Abattoir workers, farmers high risk, 10 to 40% mortality, hemorrhagic fever. Organ failure, ribavirin may help, but evidence weak. Nosocomial transmission common. Health workers die, and viruses keep jumping. Bats harbor hundreds of unknown coronaviruses. Rodents carry arenaviruses. Birds host influenzas. Pigs mix flu strains. Deforestation pushes humans into wildlife habitat. Bushmeat hunting exposes hunters to blood. Wet markets sell live animals in tight spaces. Perfect mixing zones. SARS jumped from bats through civets. MERS from camels. COVID, likely from bats, maybe through intermediate host. Next pandemic, could be anywhere. Bacteria evolve resistance in real time. A single mutation in DNA gyrase gene confers fluoroquinolone resistance. Plasmids carrying multiple resistance genes transfer in minutes via conjugation. Transposons, jumping genes, move resistance between chromosomes and plasmids. Integrons capture gene cassettes. One bacterium acquires resistance to 6 drugs at once. Horizontal gene transfer accelerates evolution beyond Darwinian pace. Selective pressure from antibiotics amplifies resistant clones. Hospitals become incubators. Sewage from pharmaceutical factories in India dumps antibiotic residues into rivers. Bacteria, there swim in sub-therapeutic drug concentrations. Perfect for selecting resistance. Those bacteria travel in guts of travelers. Seeds, resistance globally. Climate change worsens everything. Warming temperatures expand mosquito ranges. Anopheles, Aedes, Culex, all moving poleward and upward in elevation. Dengue in southern France. Malaria returning to areas it was eliminated from. Floods displace populations into crowded camps. Cholera outbreaks. Droughts kill livestock. People hunt more bushmeat. Ebola risk climbs. Heat waves stress immune systems. Fungal spores thrive in humidity. Hurricanes flood cities. Sewage mixes with floodwater. Leptospirosis. Vibrios bloom. The science exists to stop most of this. Vaccines for measles, polio, pneumococcus, Hib, rotavirus, hepatitis B, HPV. Coverage gaps leave millions unprotected. Water filtration and sanitation, basic infrastructure, prevents diarrheal diseases. Antibiotics used rationally slow resistance. Surveillance networks detect outbreaks early. Rapid response teams contain them. But funding falls short. Political will falters. Inequality persists. High-income countries hoard vaccines during pandemics. Low-income countries can't afford second-line TB drugs. New technologies emerge. mRNA vaccines prove fast. COVID shots from gene sequence to arms in 10 months. Malaria vaccines after decades. Monoclonal antibodies for Ebola, RSV, gene-drive mosquitoes to crash malaria vector populations, CRISPR targeting bacterial plasmids, but translation to global use, years, regulatory hurdles, cost, distribution challenges, cold chain requirements. You can invent the perfect tool, but if it doesn't reach the people who need it, what's the point? The final number. Infectious diseases caused 9.2 million deaths in 2013, 17% of all global deaths per WHO. Respiratory infections, diarrhea, TB, malaria, HIV topped the list. Lower respiratory infections alone, 3 million deaths. Most are preventable, most are curable, but they keep killing. Because poverty, because access, because resistance, because neglect. Here's the thing you need to remember. Pathogens are evolution in fast forward. Bacteria replicate in 20 minutes. Viruses in hours. They outnumber us, outweigh us. E. coli in one human gut exceeds the number of humans who have ever lived. They were here 3 billion years before us. They'll be here long after. We're the hosts. They're just trying to survive. The fact that survival sometimes kills us is incidental. A bacterium doesn't hate you. A virus has no malice. Their chemistry, replication, mutation, selection, the same forces that built your brain built their resistance genes. We invented antibiotics in 1928. They cracked them by 1960. We invent faster computers. They evolve faster genes. It's a race we're not winning by brute force. We win by thinking different. Vaccines, diagnostics, narrow-spectrum drugs that spare good bacteria, phage therapy. Combination treatments that block resistance pathways, public health infrastructure that catches outbreaks at 3 cases, not 3,000, but that requires seeing pathogens not as enemies to destroy, but as biological facts to manage. They're not going away. The question is whether we adapt smarter than they do. And here's the late factual reveal that reframes everything. In 2024, researchers at Rocky Mountain Laboratories published in Emerging Infectious Diseases that chronic wasting disease prions don't transmit to human cerebral organoids, tested 3 CWD strains, 2 human PRNP genotypes, 180 days exposure, no propagation, species barrier holds. But that same year, Spanish researchers showed that once CWD prions adapt through sheep, they can infect human prion protein mice, not direct, but through intermediate host, sheep, goats, cattle eating contaminated feed, prions could evolve the right fold. And we know prions survive in soil for decades. Plants uptake them. Herbivores eat plants. Prions concentrate. Deer populations in Wyoming, Colorado hit 50% infection rates in some herds. Hunters field dress carcasses, expose themselves to spinal fluid. 16 million Americans hunt deer. 32 million eat venison. CWD hasn't jumped yet, but mad cow disease took 10 years from first cases to human deaths. Curie took decades. We're still in the window. The fact that we don't see human CWD cases today doesn't mean they won't show up in 2030. Prion diseases have incubation periods longer than careers. Surveillance isn't sensitive enough. Autopsy rates dropped. Misdiagnosis as Alzheimer's or generic dementia is easy. No one checks unless family pushes. Even then, PRP staining requires special techniques. Most labs can't do it. The true burden could be hidden. And if it crosses, there's no going back. Prions persist in environment. Contaminated soil, equipment, slaughterhouse drains. Remediation nearly impossible. Incineration at 600 degrees Celsius for hours still leaves traces. That's the pathogen that should scare you most. Not the virus that kills fast. The protein that kills slow and leaves no survivors and spreads through the ground itself. Silent, patient, inevitable. Cold, protein, silence.